Sharon, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. As Marty said, I'm with SovereignNet Communications. We're based in Bellows Falls. We are the provider that built the network that you're using for FiberConnect. And I'll be speaking a little bit later, but thank you for allowing us to participate in this discussion.
Thanks, Sharon. And then also Kevin Nadsom is with us this morning. Kevin is at the Department of Information and Innovation just across the way here in Montpelier. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here.
So I think many of you know Kevin because he's the guy that's been at your libraries doing the network installation way back when, and continues to be really involved in this project. So Kevin, thanks for your help, and glad to have you here this morning. So just a brief introduction to this project. There are 42 libraries that are part of the state managed wide area network that have the fiber service from SovereignNet. We're going to be talking about some contracts, about equipment maintenance, about usage reports, and some changes that we've made in the bandwidth. We'll be talking about Erate. So we've got a lot to cover. So I think the first thing I'll do is just turn this right over to Sharon at SovereignNet Communications.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. And although I wasn't with SovereignNet at the time that this network was first being built and when this project came together, it is something I've been aware of from the beginning because I've been part of the telecom industry in Vermont for some time. So I was so happy when I was able to join SovereignNet 2 years ago. And this project is something that I'm particularly proud of and that I know SovereignNet is proud of. Just to give you a quick background, and I know there's a presentation which we will make available to you if you have interest to learn more about us. But we are a small, started out as a small, scrappy company in 1995 in Bellows Falls, where we're still based. And we entered the market really just to give businesses and residences an alternative to Fairpoint in certain markets. At that time, it was, whoops, there's a little feedback. It was actually Verizon, and as you know, there were really no options. So over years, we developed with the help of broadband stimulus funding, we were able to develop a world-class network that is really the engine behind the FiberConnect project. So it's really exciting to be a small Vermont company to help so many communities around the state. I'm not sure what you guys think about the feedback. I can hear it. I'm not sure if you can, so I do apologize for that. But moving ahead in the presentation, I'm going to skip over the summary that I tried to recap for you and just going here to the testimonials just to give you a sense of the range of customers that we have. Not only the 42 libraries that are part of this group, but we've come to be very rigorous broadband suppliers for all types of businesses and nonprofits. So you can just see a snapshot of some of the folks that we serve. We serve many schools, actually hundreds of Vermont schools as well, so we're very proud of that. Marty had wanted me to give you guys a recap of the contract situation. You'll remember that this network was being built. So at that time, we entered 5-year contracts with the library, the main library, of course, for internet, and then with each of you individual libraries for your connection into the network that you already know about and that Kevin will tell you more about. So the way those contracts worked were when your service turned up at your library, that's when we started that clock of the 5-year window. So I have 2 sets of the account numbers and contract end dates. This first slide is really just by alphabetical by the first name of your library, and then the second slide actually is sorted so that you can see which of the contracts are coming up next. You'll notice that the first one isn't coming due until July next year, which is obviously this will match up very well with, I believe, the E-rate funding windows. And one thing I want to make sure you're of is when a contract ends, we don't just, jack up the price or anything like that. What happens is if for some reason you finish the contract and we haven't entered a new contract, then you would just continue, month to month at the current price with no change until we talk about, maybe a change you want to your account. I do think the E-rate USAC process may want you to be entering at least 1-year commitments during each funding window, but certainly as we move forward after the end of these contracts, the current ones, we can certainly just follow the funding window and just go kind of 1 year at a time as you assess your needs at your individual libraries. So there's no big, pressure to make any changes. I know we just completed the E-rate funding window for this coming year. I believe for libraries it's the same as schools where it starts on July 1st. So then, next year as we get into the spring when that funding window is out there, and I know that the Department of Libraries does your E-rate applications, it's really at that time that we would start to decide if we need to literally have a contract for you to continue with your funding. I wanted you to be aware, I know you do know a lot of the benefits you have from being part of the FiberConnect network, but one thing as we talked yesterday in the first webinar, I sort of documented a bunch of things that you probably know, but I'm just saying it just to make sure you feel you're getting value out of your connections. I already mentioned that the Department of Libraries does your E-rate applications for you. Also, you get your E-rate subsidy on the connection because of that, so that even though we offered this service far below the market value, the actual cost of the connection that we're charging is $200 a month, which actually for a small library is a big expense. But because of your E-rate subsidy, what you're paying or what's really hitting your budget is much lower, which is obviously a benefit because internet access, if you were to take internet access from us, because typically libraries wouldn't put in, I don't know what's the word for it, like filters and all those sorts of things, you wouldn't necessarily qualify for subsidy on a dedicated internet connection, whereas you do qualify for your full subsidy because this is actually a transport connection into a network. And then I know Kevin will talk about the help desk and internet too later, but I just wanted to recap that to make sure we touched on it. The last thing I was going to mention is there are many things that, since you have this state-of-the-art network connected to your libraries in the equipment that you have at each location, there are other services that we can start to talk about to put on top of that. And I wasn't going to go into all the pros and cons of having this phone, it's called a hosted PBX phone system that we actually do recommend if you're in a situation where your phone equipment is outdated, especially if you are a little bit larger for a library and have maybe 5 or more phone lines. This is something you might want to look at. And then just going to the last slide, we actually did work with one of you on a hosted phone system, and it was something we were able to upgrade the technology, the features, the handsets, and save money at the same time. So someone says, what's a PBX? So a PBX is typically a very expensive piece of equipment that is used to deliver phone service with different features, and that's a hardware-based system. So a hosted PBX is one where it's essentially a virtual phone system. You're using the internet to create your phone system, as opposed to having to invest in like $10,000 or $20,000, for example, for hardcore phone equipment. I think most of your libraries are quite small, so you wouldn't have a PBX, but something like, maybe in Burlington or some of the larger libraries may actually have a physical phone system on site it saves money when it's running, but it's something where you have to put a very high capital investment to buy it in the beginning. So a hosted PBX is just a way to give you really all the benefits of a PBX without having to make the one-time investment in it. It's basically using the cloud to manage a phone system, and many small businesses and other institutions are taking advantage of this technology. But if you're a 2 or 3 or 4 phone line small library, this is something that is more than you would need, and so you wouldn't have to think about it. But if you are a little bit larger, like the example I have here is a 10-line library. For them, they were able to save money. You can see over the long term, they're saving 26% over their current solution. Or if you are a big library with equipment that's aging and you want to avoid having to invest a lot of money in a new phone system, then you could go to this model. So let's see. Oh, I see Kevin is giving people, oh, Kevin actually knew what PBX stood for, so congratulations, Kevin.
I just Googled it.
I was blanking on it, even though I've been in the phone industry for 20 years. I couldn't remember exactly what it stood for. So that was it. I know I got a sales pitch in there, but that's really just if you're looking for a new phone solution, then we can offer that over the same connection, and so no pressure there. But I think the next person to talk is going to be Kevin, and he is the guy you know because he's your technical expert.
Can you see this?
Awesome. I'm going to try. Thank you, Sharon. I will try to share my screen here. I think Jeremiah has to push it.
Yeah, just up there.
There we go.
Woohoo.
Can everybody see my graph?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. And if Department of Libraries could mute their phone so that I don't hear you guys circle back around to my earpiece, that'd be great. So I'm going to talk about 3 different things. I'm going to start off with network utilization. Then I'm going to talk about hardware maintenance, specifically about the routers in your libraries. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the DII service desk and what that's looking like and how that's going. First up, network utilization. The graph that you see in front of you goes back the last 6 months, and this is the internet circuit from the core. So as Sharon said, all of your libraries have circuits that come from your individual libraries to a core in Montpelier. They do not go directly to the internet. We have a router there in Montpelier, and it shares this circuit, this Ethernet dedicated internet access circuit with all of you. You'll see that it was at 100 megabits of bandwidth for the longest time since the inception of the project. But then we have a really fun thing happen right here in July. I think it was July 12th of this year. The Department of Libraries was able to upgrade the bandwidth in conjunction with SovereignNet from 100 megabits per second to 150 megabits per second. And being Vermonters and being libraries, we took advantage of it right away. And you can see that we were maxing out that 100 meg circuit all along. As soon as we got 150, it took us all of about a week to max it out again. That's great. That means that the network is being used. That means that we're getting as much value out of this service as possible. It's interesting to note that even though we're maxing out the circuit, there's not packet loss. The edge router is doing its job. Packets may be delayed, the latency might increase, but we're not seeing any packet loss. What we're seeing here is exactly what we love, a lot of data flowing frequently across the line. The blue bars represent the maximum, the peaks, for data being downloaded from the internet. But another valuable part of the FiberConnect network are the green bars. The green bars represent data being transmitted, and you can see back here in March, we actually had someone, I like to think of it as a small business owner, came in to a library somewhere and pushed a lot of data upstream. Maybe they're uploading a website to the internet. Maybe they're a video producer sending something out. That is a benefit of your connections that is not available readily to the public. Most people who purchase direct internet access for their library or for their small business, they might have 50 megabits upload or 50 megabits download, but they'll wind up with 10 megabits upload. Not on the FiberConnect network. It's symmetric. So someone here is uploading 100 megabits of data. That was our maximum for the day. And you see those green spikes throughout our utilization. The more of those, the better. That's people taking advantage of that symmetric connection. These are maximums, by the way. If you look down low, you'll see a blue line threaded throughout. That's the average utilization. So yes, we have individual file transfers that are happening that are really big, but on a day-to-day basis, if you get online, we're looking at a utilization that's under 50 megabits per second for download, and of course, the upload is even lower with a couple little spikes mixed in there. This is our primary internet circuit. This is the public internet. One of the benefits of working with SovereignNet is that we actually have a second circuit coming out of the core. And that circuit, instead of going to the public internet, goes to Internet 2. Now, at your individual libraries, at your workstations, you might not know if your traffic is being routed over the public internet or if it's being routed out over Internet 2. Your routers take care of that in the background. They look at the destination that you want to go to. If they have a faster path available over Internet 2, they immediately route that traffic out that second connection. So let me show you a graph of that utilization. It's a lot more sporadic, but there's still a lot of traffic that's coming from your libraries to the core, and that core router says, hey, the Internet 2 connection is going to be better, and boom, out it goes. So that circuit, again, it doesn't have as bandwidth limitations quite like our EDIA, and Sharon can speak to SovereignNet's value that they add to it. They play an essential role between us and UVM, who's the Internet 2 partner in the state. And you can see that here. You can see that we're sending traffic out to them. The average isn't too high, probably 5 megs maybe there on a daily basis. But that's another value that you're getting from the FiberConnect network that you would not get from a regular public internet connection. That's network utilization. Let me hop over here to the chat window and see if people have chimed in, or if you've got audio, by all means, shoot with questions about network utilization. Not hearing anything, so I'm going to move on to hardware maintenance. If I'm talking too fast for you, put it in the chat window there. You'll hopefully see on my screen. I got it set up now so I can see both. Hardware maintenance. The most important piece of hardware at your library is your router. And when we did the initial deployment, we, as part of the rollout, the Department of Libraries paid for the first year of maintenance on your router. All of those routers have a life cycle to them. So I went out and I did some research to find out if any of those routers were coming to an end. We used 3 different models. None of them are coming to an end of life in the next 5 years. So that's great news. There is, however, maintenance on those routers. It's called SmartNet maintenance. And it enables DII to download security updates or operating system updates to your routers. It is the responsibility of each library to keep that SmartNet maintenance in place so long as you're connected to the FiberConnect network. Now, I'm not sure how much information Sheila communicated previously to all the libraries. We found out yesterday that there were some gaps in that info. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get contact information for a partner that we work with called Presidio. They resell that SmartNet maintenance from Cisco. They're a Cisco reseller. I will get that over to the Department of Libraries so that that can come out to you, and that's your contact to get that SmartNet maintenance in place if you have let it lapse. And I see that chat in from Amy. Wasn't Department of Libraries going to purchase it and then invoice the libraries? I'll leave that question for Marty. I'm not quite sure how the finance side of it is going to work. But I do know from a technical point of view, we want to make sure that everybody has that in place. We're all in this together. If one FiberConnect library lets it lapse, that's a security vulnerability for all of the libraries connected to the WAN. And so that's why it's a requirement that you have that service in place. Questions about hardware? Anybody?
Oh, can you hear me, Kevin?
I can. Who's this?
This is Cindy up at the Cobley in Linneville.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. So am I correct? Someone will be in touch with this about the SmartNet updates.
You're definitely going to get contact information. And then I think, Marty, maybe you want to chime in about the finances. How's that going to work? Do we know?
Yeah, actually, I really appreciate that comment from Amy because I think this is something that maybe slipped through the cracks when Sheila left. So we'll go back, look at what we had promised you, look at the SmartNet, gather some information about your equipment, and we'll be sending information more about that so that you know exactly where you stand and what you need to do.
Perfect. I can say that the Department of Libraries has kept SmartNet in place on the edge router, and its security is up to date. You may have noticed a couple of 9 p.m. or midnight outages. If you monitor your network, that's when we do maintenance on your edge router. I think it's been a while, though. I think it's been about 6 months since there was a security patch at the edge. But DII keeps that edge router up to date. That's essential. Otherwise, you're vulnerable to quite a bit of traffic from the internet, and that's something we take care of for you. Lisa asks, how does SmartNet work? It is a contract with Cisco, and essentially you pay a fee. I think it winds up being about 10% of the value of your router. So the biggest libraries have a router that costs about, I think, $2,000. The smallest libraries have a router that I think costs about $1,500. Don't quote me on that. Those are ballpark prices. You pay your yearly fee, and that gives us the right to download security upgrades and operating system upgrades to your router. What that looks like on my side is I take the serial number from your router, I plug it into Cisco's website, they check to make sure that there's a SmartNet contract available. If there is, I can then download the software and do the upgrade process on the fly. I haven't had to do an upgrade on individual library routers in the past 12 months. We monitor that to make sure that as they release security patches, we keep you up to date.
So, hey, Kevin, this is Sharon. Just looking at all the questions about SmartNet, it sounds like the biggest question they have is whether, you know, there's something that has to be done at the local library and how will they know when they have to do something. So what I think I just heard from you is that in terms of the technical aspect, you manage all that and do all that, and then it becomes an issue if you go to do a patch on a specific library and you find out that their SmartNet is not up to date. Is that about right?
Correct. Correct. And I'm wondering, actually, as Marty digs into it, I'm wondering if Sheila kept this in place and we've just lost track of it since her departure. She was a very valuable asset to the project, and I think we'll be able to pick up where she left off and hopefully get it straightened out. Other questions about that? If not, I'm going to move on to talking about the DII service desk. Good, Nancy, I'm glad that answered your question. So the DII service desk, this is a neat feature for you guys. It is unique. Marty pointed this out yesterday, and I hadn't quite thought about it like this. The public libraries are the only institution in Vermont that has access to the DII service desk other than state employees. And so really, we look at that as a large benefit of this network. We provide support. DII is my organization, the IT department for the state. We provide support for all of the network equipment and all of the networking that happens on FiberConnect, from your switches and your wireless access points to the routers in your individual libraries, the routers and the wireless controllers at the core, and then out to the internet. We collaborate with SovereignNet. We take the transport infrastructure that they put in place and we turn it into a live network that you guys take advantage of. The service desk supports that. If you have a maintenance request, or even if you just want to know information, the service desk is absolutely the right way to go about getting in touch with DII. So far this year, we've had about 60 tickets from FiberConnect libraries. That's about 2 a week. And if I had to guess, I'd say that maybe a quarter of those are just information, and that's fine. People are calling into the service desk and they're saying, hey, I'm going to be decommissioning an old workstation and bringing a new workstation online. I don't know if DII needs to do anything technical. Could you please let me know? I get one of those tickets every couple of months. The answer to that, by the way, is no. Nothing needs to happen on our part here at DII. If you're getting rid of the old workstation and bringing in a new one, you're going to do just fine. On the other hand, we have some libraries that use a private wireless network. They use it for their library-owned wireless devices. And they'll open up a ticket, they'll call in, open up a ticket, and they'll give me the MAC address off that device and say, hey, please permit this new device that we purchased or upgraded onto our private network. That's great coming into the service desk as well. Even though the FiberConnect network has been primarily my project, I am actually one of 6 engineers here at the state of Vermont. I don't work alone. I've got a bunch of great colleagues. When you call into the service desk, you're going to reach a call center during the day of about 4 or 5 individuals right down the hall from me. They'll open a ticket in our land desk ticketing system, and any one of those 6 engineers can pick it up. And I've been fortunate enough to go on vacation at least once or twice over the course of the project, and I know some of my colleagues have picked up FiberConnect tickets and provided service while I was out of the office. So calling into that service desk is the best way to reach that whole team of people. Now, I gave you a handout when we deployed the equipment, and if we were in a room, I'd ask for a show of hands of the library directors that could find that handout. But since there's not a hand raise button in WebConnect, I think in WebEx, I think you guys will be off the hook. I think some of you may have taped it to the network rack. That's great. I know some, hey, there's a hand raise, so Rebecca can find ours, that's great. I know some people tucked it into a plastic sleeve page protector and put it in your IT binder. That's great as well. I have sent that over to Marty in the materials that go out after this webinar. She's going to include that handout. But if you don't want to wait for that, the way to reach the DII service desk is to dial 802-828-6620. 802-828-6620. That's the DII service desk. That's how you get a hold of us. That's how you initiate a ticket. From there, it's an email thread so that when I reply, it not only updates our ticketing system, but it also updates you when you reply. The same thing happens. There are a few of you that still send me personal emails, kevin.nadzen@vermont.gov. You're welcome to do that, but if you want service for your library, the most reliable way to do that is to call the service desk and work through that ticketing system. It lets us track our performance. It lets us track how much time we're spending supporting FiberConnect, because we actually support the network not only for the libraries, but we support the computer network for all state government. We've got about 600 devices scattered around about 200 sites in the state of Vermont, and so that service desk is a big deal for us, and so that we would really like you to use that. Every now and then, I do get a ticket in the service desk that is outside of our scope of support. Perhaps a library will call in with a question that is pertinent to a patron's device, that a patron has brought to their library, their particular device that they own, and they're having troubles with connecting to wireless, or having troubles downloading something, or they've received an alert on their device that they don't understand. Support of individual devices that belong to patrons is outside of the scope. I can tell you about the network, but when tickets like that come in, what I try to do is I try to provide as much information as I can about the network, but we will say, hey, look, it's outside of our agreement. Here's some hints. I tried to give as much information as I can, but maybe you need to engage your library IT staff, or maybe you just want to say to the patron, hey, I'm sorry that your device isn't working. Try Googling it here from one of our library terminals, or something along those lines. So there are some tickets that come in that are outside of scope. That's okay. We'll give you as much information as we can. We'll tell you it's outside of scope, and we'll make the best of it from there. Nancy sent in the chat, there needs to be a designated person and email from each library. Yes, the library director needs to be the one to access the service desk. I know that the folks over there in the bullpen who take the calls, depending on who you get, some of them are more lenient than others. And they will say, oh, your library director is named Nancy. Okay, I trust you. I'll put in a ticket. But really, it needs to be coming from the director. And if you'd like to change that information, then the director calls in and opens a ticket to the service desk that says, hey, please add the following person as a contact for our library. We went through a round of this. A bunch of you directors played musical chairs, and so we had a couple of tickets come in, and we updated who's the director at which library in our ticketing system. But yeah, we don't want just anybody calling in. We want to make sure that we're hearing from the library with the authority to have us get into your network and send out that information. Are there any questions about one of the musical chair directors? Yeah, I know. I think it's great. I think it's great. It happens in the IT community too. Fortunately, we've got people go over to Green Mountain Coffee Roasters and come right back to us. The neat thing about being in Vermont. Any questions? Any open questions for me? That's everything I have about network utilization, about the hardware, and about the DII service desk. This is really an exciting project. I mean, I think you all know this. You all met me. I find it thrilling. Kellogg Hubbard is my local library. I'm over there all the time. When we first rolled it out, I was the guy who stopped by on his way home from work and downloaded a Netflix movie through the window on the wireless. And I know there's a lot of that going on. I know that. I'm going to hop back to the chart here. This utilization chart, when I look at these charts for state government, there's a big gap every weekend. And there's not for libraries. There's this tiny little sliver right here, and that's Sundays. And so if you're not aware of it, one of the neat things about your network is people are using it even when you're closed. Even on Sundays, average utilization dips, but there's still utilization in there. And so I just find it thrilling, and I'm real happy to be a part of it.
Kevin, thanks. Great presentation, lots of information. Thanks for all the feedback from folks, questions, and Amy, it sounds like you have great files at your fingertips that we're going to take advantage of, so thanks for that. So next on the roster here is Jeremiah, who's going to talk about E-rate.
Okay, so this year I was one of 3 E-rate coordinators. I kind of inherited it at the last minute. We did get everything submitted on time. My task was really to submit the 471 for the consortium. So everything was submitted on time. We've had, it was a new system that USAC was using, and that's the organization that we submit our E-rate forms through. They had a new system in place, and there were a lot of problems with it. We're not the only consortium that kind of suffered through it this year. There are many others. So what this means for us is there is the chance that we may not see our discounts as soon as we used to. I think they used to kind of kick in around September. They may kick in around October this year. So there are still some kinks that need to be worked out that I'm currently working with USAC to kind of fix our 471. The problem was we had a lot of libraries that we just could not link to a school district. And there was no way for me to change this, and when I talked to USAC, there was no way for them to change it. So that's kind of where the problems arose. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. I don't really have anything else other than things might be a little held up this year.
And after this was brought up yesterday on the webinar yesterday, I did talk to our E-rate expert at SovereignNet and did alert her to this. And so just in case there's any delay in funding, don't worry, you won't get disconnect notices or anything.
So I'm looking at some questions that are coming in here. Good questions. Do any libraries use the reports to show users? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure many of them do. Luna Brogan from Plainfield was on the webinar yesterday. She made a couple of comments about how surprising the information can be when you look at those reports for your libraries. Some of you may have trustees that question the need to have that network open when your library is closed. And those statistics, you can show those usage reports, those gaps that Kevin pointed out on the weekends. We know that your parking lots are filled with folks on the weekends or evenings when you're closed. So it's a terrific service that you're offering the community. And those usage reports and Wi-Fi reports that Kevin sends out give you that data. If you have questions, you can call us, you can call Kevin. But I will go back, see if, I don't know if we recorded that webinar that Sheila did. We can kind of try to track that down, but sounds like we need to do a repeat of that. I will say that Luna Brogan at Plainfield made an offer to help anybody that wanted some assistance in how to read those reports and ideas for using those reports with your trustees or town officials. So I don't think Luna would mind if you called her. She's the director at the Cutler Library in Plainfield. Any other questions for any of the presenters? So I'm thinking one thing that you've got in your minds now, a lot of you are starting to work on your budgets for fiscal 18. So when you're looking at that line item for your connection, your SovereignNet connection, that monthly cost, that $200 charge is going to stay. So there's no change to that. The E-rate, we will continue to do the consortial application from this department so that those applications are in. The Department of Libraries is committed to continuing to pay for the core, the equipment that Kevin manages here at DII, and providing your internet service. That's something that we're providing. It's in our budget. It's in my 18 budget that I'm working on as well. So you shouldn't see any change in that. There may be some of you that use E-rate for your phone service, that you apply, you make those applications on your own for some return. If that's the case, you probably have seen that USAC, the FCC made some changes in the E-rate program last year. They called it the E-rate modernization program, which means that they're getting out of the phone business and into internet. So that's something to think about when you're thinking about your phone service. The E-rate percentages, discount percentages, they're phasing that out so they get less and less every year, and eventually will be eliminated. And I think Jeremiah, you said maybe 2019.
Yeah, it's either 2019 or 2018. I think it's 2019. So
the phone E-rate discounts are going to disappear forever.
They're already pretty significantly reduced, and they will continue to drop over the next 2 years until they're gone.
So we're committed to, how long? Well, certainly through your 5-year contracts, we assess this every year. So far, I've not had any challenges to this part of our budget. I think it's a really exciting program. My interest is expanding this and having more libraries have fiber connection, not less. I think it's a really important service for your citizens. So we're in it for the long haul as long as the legislature supports the expenditure. I hope that helps, Nancy.
Well, and this is Sharon. What I would say is, of course, we can't predict the future, but I do know that even with this current crop of gubernatorial candidates, there's still big gaps. There's still big gaps in broadband coverage. So when you were talking about the service you provide on weekends and when you're open to folks in your community with the broadband access, I can't imagine that the funding would be cut.
That's actually a great point too. When you're talking with your local legislators or candidates for the legislature, it's likely that they have no idea that the state pays for this service or even that your library offers this service. And when you think back to those those graphs that Kevin showed, and the idea that you're able to kind of seamlessly go in and out of that Internet 2 network so that you're offering these the great bandwidth and speed that's not available elsewhere to your patrons. Your legislators would take some real pride in that the state is making that possible. So, that's a great place to talk it up. I want to talk just a little bit. I don't see any other questions, but if there are questions, feel free to submit them. I want to talk a little bit about some opportunities, or answering the question, why fiber? Why participate in this network? When you're thinking in the long term, why to keep your membership in this network? So we're always looking for ways to leverage the fact that you're connected through this wide area network and how we might use that. Some of you may know that we worked earlier this year and will continue to work in the fall with the Young Writers Project. They have a grant from the Vermont Humanities Council. We're a partner on that grant project. And last spring, we used the FiberConnect network and video conferencing equipment at some libraries to do a program that featured a young adult author. The first session was here at Kellogg Hubbard Library, so we had an author here. And then I think we had 5 libraries around the state that connected through the wide area network to that program, so that we had teens at 5 different locations around the state, all FiberConnect libraries, some that had video conferencing equipment, some just used a laptop and a screen. And the kids were able to connect with the author, ask questions, and they did simultaneous writing exercises at these 5 locations around the state. We did that a couple other times, and it was very successful. We're gonna expand that and continue that program this fall. But there are all kinds of opportunities for thinking how you can use this network, how you can connect with one another to do joint programming, to bring in other content. We're kind of always on the lookout for this, but you're the creative bunch out there. You may have ideas, you may have things that you've read about or thought about and wonder if they're possible. We would love to hear for those. Amy, that's great. Love to see that comment. And so there's one thing that we're working on now is expanding the number of libraries, the number of FiberConnect libraries that had that video conferencing equipment. I've been working with a number of libraries around the state, including some of yours, to see if you have the capacity to be able to have this equipment in your libraries and use it. We're going to make a purchase this summer and deploy some of this equipment out, so there'll be more opportunities. You might want to talk with Bob Jolie up at the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum, or Selena at Rockingham. They both participated in this program. They're both FiberConnect libraries. They did it without having specialized video conferencing equipment. So you might want to understand their experience, which was actually very good and really successful. So just kind of throwing that out there. If any of you are interested in having more information about that equipment, just give me a call. We can talk. That's a good question, Amy. So the last December, the state ended funding for the, I'm trying to think of the name of the
Interactive Technologies.
Thank you, VIT, right. So that had studios around the state, and they did video telecasting. That ended, and I was part of a statewide task force to look at what we were going to do when that ended for the state, because there are lots of private individuals and organizations and state government that made regular use of that. They put me on that task force because I represent libraries, and they were aware that there was this video conferencing community video conferencing equipment in 14 of our libraries around the state. That came from a grant from Google, and they were hoping that these public libraries would pick up what VIT had done. Those of you in libraries would know that that's a tall order, partly because VIT had studios and equipment and staff, space, funding, none of which you have really in any abundance. And one thing we learned when we surveyed these libraries, that your meeting rooms are booked. So to have additional traffic in and out of your libraries and your meeting rooms, that was going to be a real hardship. So we were able to pick up a little bit here and there. We've had we've used Midstate. We have this equipment at Midstate, so we picked up some of the UVM classes for school librarians that were formerly done at VIT. We've done those very successfully at Midstate. It may have helped a little bit, but it's the capacity that our libraries have that's really the difficulty in doing it in any large way. But I can tell you that there was a lot of interest on the part of the state of having libraries be these centers. In the end, they're working with tech schools, tech centers, to pick up a lot of that work. Other questions? So the Interactive Learning Network is something that's operated out of the Agency of Education. They also had a representative on that task force. When we worked with Google, and actually several times since, we've been in active conversations with education folks to see if there's a way that we could tap into that network. Turns out that it wasn't really practical. At one point, they were changing their technology. We continue to kind of look at that, and we'll continue those conversations. But at this point, there's no real opportunity there for libraries.
Marty, did the ILN actually get turned down and merged into the video conferencing that you spoke of at the Tech Center?
I don't think so, not that I'm aware of, but it's been a while since I've talked to those folks, so I may be behind, but I think the answer to that is no.
I mean, so really the libraries are in a great position with FiberConnect to offer video conferencing over this infrastructure, whether it's with the additional equipment that you're talking about or just taking advantage of some of the technologies that are already out there combined with the bandwidth that they have.
That's exactly right. So that's why I mentioned Rockingham and St. Johnsbury, who were able to participate in that statewide young adult, young writers project with their kids without any specialized equipment, any video conferencing equipment. So it really works. The opportunities are there. I think one of the first things that happened when we installed that video conferencing equipment, Kellogg Hubbard had an individual that came to them and said, we want to do a business seminar, and I don't remember the details, and they wanted to have an audience into the seminar at, I think, 4 or 5 locations around the state. So they chose 4 or 5 other libraries that also had video conferencing equipment, and they brought in a presenter from Scandinavia. So their main keynote speaker was in, I don't know, Sweden or someplace, and brought in the content, and simultaneously people at these 5 sites around the state, all in public libraries, were able to participate in the business seminar and with one another. So it was very interactive. So the possibilities are really quite amazing. We want individuals to come in and use this equipment, but also there's great opportunity for community groups.
Amy just asked, how is Skype different than video conferencing? And when I think of video conferencing on a small scale, Skype is absolutely a go-to app. It is a video conferencing app. Right now, we're using Citrix's GoToMeeting. We could be doing video right now as well. Those are just two different applications that both provide video conferencing with different feature sets.
That's right. With the video conferencing equipment we purchased, we decided in the end to move away something that was really kind of proprietary for video conferencing. Polycom is one of the vendors that sells that equipment. And we went to web-based service, so those libraries do use Skype or Google Hangout for their for the functionality. And it you know, there've been glitches here and there. I won't be shy about saying that, but there's been some really great successes as well. Okay, it seems like the stream of questions has stopped. You know how to get in contact with us. We encourage you to keep up the conversation and questions. I will follow up, and I'm going to try to do this next week before I leave on vacation to get a packet of information that will go out electronically to you with some of these documents that we talked about and some updated information. We recorded yesterday's session and also today's. I think, will we make both of those available?
Sure.
So we'll send out links to both of these webinars. If you've got staff or trustees that would like to listen in, you'll be able to do that. Thank you again, all of you, for taking time to be with us again. Thanks especially to Sharon and Kevin. You're great. We love working with you. And we'll continue to be in touch. And have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.